Welcome to the Fearless Asian Man Show, where we empower Asian men to become strong men who create the relationships and lifestyle they desire. Now, let's get this show started.
I love the book, The Mask of Masculinity by Lewis Howes. He really breaks down how shame has affected his life as a man in multiple ways, from the wealth to being funny to all these other areas. And there's exercises in there, affirmations in there that have been mentioned in other self-help books, but some of them are new. And one thing I love doing is, just telling myself what values I have and why I am worthy as an individual now, regardless of what other people say. So if you can cultivate that and keep telling yourself that out loud to yourself in the mirror every day, you are slowly rewiring your brain. And it may take a couple years. It's not going to happen overnight, but you will slowly rewire to a more realistic and positive mindset, so that you don't get all the shame and disappointment that just cripples your potential. Imagine being so ashamed that you're not a lawyer or a doctor, that you can't possibly do anything, that you can't get out of bed, that you can't, chase your passion of becoming a travel blogger or a YouTuber or a dancer, whatever it is. So you really have to overcome that, not only so that you can live the happiest, most successful life that you can, but also so that you have a good compass to go forward with. Warren Buffett calls this your inner scorecard. You want to rather be the guy who is content with himself, regardless of what other people think of you, versus the guy who only is content when others are happy, regardless of what you think. Because the latter format is never constant, and it's susceptible to manipulation, and it's not realistic. There are people who are rich and they're still unhappy. There are people who are powerful who are still, miserable with their lives or doing something that they hate because of the money. And that's, based off whatever value you set, based on my values, that might not be a truly fulfilled life.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the point that I really want to suss out of what you just said or expound upon was the whole point of, it's your life to live. People are not going to live your life. They're not living your life, and especially your Asian parents. And I think from my work with clients, whether it was with, again, life coaching, basically being happier and more successful. I know, by the way, that's more broad, or in the love life, a lot of these guys, the big thing that they're kind of held captive by, and again, it takes time to kind of get it out of them because they might not be aware of it, or they don't want to say it because they're ashamed of it, is the fact that they are still living under the shadow of their parents and the parents' expectations, as well as faulty views on what they think their parents want from them. And that has been a big killer for a lot of dreams, because, it used to be something that really frustrated me, because with guys, I'm like, dude, I can tell you literally how to improve your dating life in a month or two. I mean, of course, some people, it takes longer, but I was telling them what to do and it wouldn't happen. And I'm like, why does it keep not happening? And eventually, after going into my coaching toolkit and going deep with them, it's oh, it's because you're scared of what your parents think. What would they think if you were to form a YouTube channel of you pranking women or picking up girls, right? And for them, that held them back and would take months off their life, months of indecision. There'd be rational excuses I'm really busy with work, and I'm thinking bullshit. If you really wanted something to be done, if you really wanted to be happy and to live a life of freedom and purpose, whatever that means to you, you would do it. There's something holding them back. And I want to actually tie this point to something that I know you're really good at kind of dissecting, is the whole point of self-hatred. I think a lot of guys with shame, they don't feel like they're good enough, and they actually hate themselves. I want to put it that way. Because I used to hate myself. I would look at myself in the mirror and think oh man, Jeremy, you're not good looking enough. You're ugly, or you're not making enough money compared to X-friend. X-friend is better than you with women, and he tries a lot less harder than you do. Why do you fucking suck, right? And then that would put me in almost I'm going to use a Star Wars reference, a state of rage like a Sith, where I would just be like, I want to fucking show them, right? Then I would go fucking crazy with action and burn myself out. But on this point, how can someone actually stop hating themselves and actually like themselves? Because I think for a lot of Asian guys, what drives them when it comes to dating, career, and success is actually they have a little bit of self-loathing inside of them.
Absolutely, yes. So notice how I'm kind of talking about these psychological terms. Now I'm a very technical guy, and you might be wondering, your listeners might be wondering why I'm not going into like the tactics. And I've been there, and you've kind of already hinted at the answer. A lot of these guys, it's not the information or the logical side that's really holding them back. I mean, as many Asians are so logical, it of course doesn't make sense that you know the steps. There's like thousands of dating articles, thousands of how to get a job or career interview articles out there, and yet you're still not seeing results. And if you ever fall into a situation where you're banging your head against the wall and you're listening to all these tips and trying them out, or just overanalyzing and trying to use your logical brain, but still not seeing results after months, chances are it's not a logical block that's really stopping you. You're probably not as logical as you think anyways. It's usually something that's deeply psychological. And that's really why I really want to emphasize these points. It really took me some exploration and research to go into that and realize, oh my goodness, psychology really is one of the answers to a lot of these long-term issues. And so going back to your question about self-hatred or self-love, they're almost like two coins, two sides of the same coin. With self-love, it's really about being happy and loving who you are as a person. Now, if you're thinking and your natural thinking is constantly, you're not good enough, or that really sucks, or that's stupid, or you get these moments of resentment or hatred or jealousy, or basically like these negative emotions, self-pity, that's really a sign that you need to start, changing that and working on that. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, he has a saying, they're both worth billions of dollars, and he says that self-pity, envy, and resentment are the most useless modes of thought out there.
And just a quick note, I want to let you know that I got some free shit for you guys. If you want to have a guide on how to double your confidence, how to build your backbone and be more assertive, as well as how to meet and date more women and have more of the love life that you want, go ahead and go to the show notes and you'll see a link to the free guide section where you can download all the guides that I just mentioned. Also, another thing I do want to mention to you is join us in the Brotherhood of Asian Men that I created on Facebook. In this Facebook group, you're going to be meeting as well as supporting and growing with other fellow Asian guys who want to become their most fearless and powerful selves in the areas of their confidence as well as their relationships, whether platonic, but also mainly their love lives. Hope to see you in there. And again, go to the show notes to see a link on how to access that. Back to the show.
So really think it through and start working towards improving your thinking and your life. And that comes internally and externally. Get around successful, positive people. Get away from people, whether it's your parents or others, who are really tearing you down or imprinting that idea that you aren't. And then internally start thinking positive thoughts. When you catch yourself with these negative thoughts, be aware of them. You might not even be catching a lot of these because they happen so quickly, but just keep trying and you'll get better at it. And when you think about it, some Asian men, they only hang around others who are just as bad or worse at these aspects. And so when you hang around people like that, what's going to happen? You're probably going to get dragged down to their level. But if you hang around people and they can be Asian, they can be non-Asian, maybe it's a good to have a mix of both. But when you hang around people who are more socially skilled or really have a good sense of self-worth and self-esteem, it just naturally rubs off on you. You don't even have to sometimes consciously try. The other week, I was doing um, the CrossFit Open, which is crazy because, a few years ago, as this non-athletic Asian, I never would have thought that I would have gotten into this, um, highly highly intense sport. And basically, the Open is where you kind of like enter to compete at the annual World Championship competition around CrossFit. I only did it for fun. I really didn't have a chance of being eligible, but I kind of wanted to see where I stacked up against my competition. And I also volunteered to judge, and I ran across a girl who was quite mean to me because she wanted the best score, and I told her, you didn't actually complete this repetition, and she got really negative against me, and that got to me. I tried not to let it get to me, but it did. And I started ranting about how, she was complaining and fighting me about this to my friend who was very positive and very into fitness. And he basically told me, just stop thinking about it. And he's really good at just not dwelling on negative things. And just by being around him more, I was able to get that out of my mind much faster than I usually do. I'm an overanalyzer and a dweller, so sometimes I'll dwell on things for weeks, months, sometimes years if it's bad enough. But he was there, and he was just like, stop thinking about it. And then he transitioned intentionally, or I don't know if it was intentional or not, but he transitioned to positive topics. And it took me like half a minute, but I was like, you know what, he's right. And we were on to talking about something positive. So in terms of self-love, it's really important because you don't want to be in a situation where you're rich, you're happy, and you have a great body, but you still hate yourself for some reason. You've achieved so much, but you're still crippling your potential, your happiness, and your performance because you don't like yourself. And that will limit your opportunities too. If you think, I can't get that job interview, or I can't talk to that girl because you don't think you're good enough, you're turning your chances to 0% rather than 1% or 5% or 10% because you're not even trying. So self-love is really important, and it's something that isn't just woo-woo. Like a lot of successful people who are celebrities are coming forward and talking about that on Instagram, on YouTube as well. Will Smith has a 5-minute Instagram story. I think it's actually like 3 minutes, pinned to his profile on Instagram about how self-love is one of like the key reasons for success, and how even the most basic thing such as food is a representation and manifestation of self-love. I never thought of it that way. He says that, if you are eating food and it's junk food and you're letting yourself doing that, you're not giving yourself that self-love. Because if you were to love yourself, you'd be like, hey, I love you more. I love you so much that I'm not going to let you eat that junk food because it's going to ruin your body. It's going to ruin your lifespan, and it's going to make you less attractive.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's absolutely true, because I think everything is kind of a reflection of what's going on the inside. Another way to put it is the results in your life are a result of what's going on the inside. And of course, I want to be very clear. This does not mean that you chose your parents and that when people were mean to you in the past, all of it was your fault because you're somehow attracting it. I do think a lot of times life is a little bit random and shit things can happen to good people, etc. But I will say, when it comes to stuff like things within your control, like how good is your love life in relationships with people and women, like how successful are you in your career and or business, are you eating healthy? This is all kind of within your control, although I know sometimes it feels like it's not. And all this is kind of a reflection of what's going on inside. I think from my experiences too with coaching people, the results they get is literally a byproduct of their beliefs, their stories, their habits, and their patterns. That's basically it. And a lot of people hate themselves, and everything that they do, their habits, whether it's trying to become successful or anything else, comes from that self-loathing place. But one thing I did want to expand upon is actually what you mentioned earlier with your friend helping you snap out of that pattern of, like being down on yourself and all that stuff. And the question I have for you is, how important is it for Asian men or men in general to really have good relationships with other men? And I know for some guys listening, they might be like, okay, I thought this podcast was about, Asian masculinity and my love life. Like, why do I have to deal with other Asian bros or bros in general or other men? Like, what's the point of that, right? That seems kind of pointless. But I would love to hear your viewpoint on that.
Yeah, so I definitely had that thought too for most of my life, and I've definitely had other thoughts that I've realized that aren't actually accurate. So one of them being like, what's the point of friends really, or what's the point of small talk or socializing or doing anything other than making more money, because otherwise you're just wasting time, and your competition is working harder than you and hustling while you're just talking or relaxing or trying to make friends. And I think why does this exist? Maybe it's because our parents had this outlook on how partying and wasting time and doing anything but studying is unproductive, and that's maybe where it's permeated. But it's perhaps also American society and entrepreneurs telling you how important it is to hustle your butt off to succeed. But when it comes to male friendships, they're incredibly important. And there's a couple books that really explain this well. The Way of Man dives into some evolutionary biology around the topic. The author is Jack Donovan. Probably one of the better books that does this is called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. But the answer is really that male friendships can help your happiness. They'll help you with your emotional intelligence and social skills, which will help with your career, your earning potential, as well as your love life. And then it also helps with your emotional stability and ironing out all the kinks with your behavior and your thinking that you aren't even aware of that are screwing you over. For example, both of the books I just mentioned detail how most men in the modern age have very few male role models growing up. 99% of your school teachers are female, and that's abnormal compared to the tens of thousands of years of human civilization, and it causes a lot of issues and problems with men, because they don't know how to be masculine. They don't know what masculine means, what it doesn't mean. They don't know how to assert themselves, to protect themselves or others, or the importance of that. And they have all these other issues that aren't ironed out because they have no male friends or role models to really bounce feedback off of. So having that will really help with your happiness, because strength of relationships is one of the highest correlators with your happiness and well-being, based off a lot of scientific research. But also it will help with just your general presence and your ability to interact with other people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for a lot of guys, it might seem like one of those points. I really want to emphasize how important this point is, because I think a lot of guys, they might hear it and they might honestly scan through the podcast for like sexy tips in terms of like, oh, that sounds good. Let me try that. But this cannot be understated in terms of how important it is, because in today's modern day society, in the past, there used to be rites of passage for masculinity, such as tribes where they might have done extreme shit, like send their kid out into the wilderness, right, and have them kill a lion. But men nowadays, with the broken families, and of course I have to generalize, of course, but with the broken families and the fact that a lot of men are raised by single mothers, might not apply to Asian guys more so, but maybe they were raised in a situation where they have the tiger mom, where the mom's the dominant one, or their dad's just a really bad model of masculinity. For example, like my dad, I love him to death, but he was basically a workaholic, and I understand it's hard to raise kids actually, and put food on the table. But in general, most Asian guys don't have a good model of masculinity. And I will also admit, growing up in the US, where we are viewed as effeminate, emasculated men in the media, which is slowly changing for the better, that will also mess with the Asian guy's sense of identity. And I think it's really important to surround yourself with the right role models and the right male relationships, because I got to tell you, I mean, it's really cliche, and you'll hear this through multiple podcasts and channels and self-development books, but you really are the 5 people that you spend the most time with. It is absolutely true. Like, everyone likes to think that they can withstand social pressure and all that stuff. And there is truth to like being a very confident man who's able to resist that. But I got to tell you, that's like swimming upstream. I hope this episode was helpful for you all. Please subscribe to this podcast, rate it, and share it with a fellow Asian brother. All this content is available on my YouTube channel and website. Links to both are in the show notes. And until next time.